Awesome. That was awesome. So thank you, Bodie. Thank you. Our house band, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
Good morning.
My name is Scott Murchison. I'm a licensed practitioner here at this community, and I'm in my final year of ministerial school, thank goodness. The end is approaching. I can actually see it. So I just wanted to start off the day by reminding you of what our vision and our mission statement are for this community. And our vision is awakening personal transformation. And I'm going to talk to you a lot about that today. And along with our mission, which is teaching tools for positive change. And so our theme for this year that all the speakers, myself and Reverend Carol and everyone who has been speaking to you this year, has been speaking on the theme of your joyous life. And we're following the book, The Happiness Project. How many of you are in some of the study groups and have been reading that book? Is everybody really, are you liking that book? Yeah. Going deeper with it, it seems kind of surface when you're looking at it until I've learned that the groups are really getting into deep, rich discussions around the topics in it. And this month, the topic is our attitude of gratitude. And I actually spoke to you, I think it was back in September was the last time I spoke to you, and it was on cultivating an attitude of gratitude. So I'm actually not going to speak on that today, but it is because there is so much to say about it. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit today as well. But since I've spoken on it, I had, Spirit actually spoke to me about a different message. And so our theme for today, or at least for this month, is keep a contented heart. And that's what I want to talk to you about today in a context of expecting ordinaries. And a long time ago, I don't know if you ever heard it, was kind of a throwaway line, but Reverend Carroll said, in Scott, he's always saying, expect ordinaries. So I wanted to talk about that today, is like what that really means. And there is a joke, if you've been from a Christian background, you've probably heard this. You might have heard it at a Science of Mind community before as well. But there's a joke about a man who was stuck on the roof of his home in a flood. In a great flood, and the water was up to his ankles while he was standing on his roof, and a neighbor was waiting by in a boat and asked him, jump on in, come on in, and I'll take you to safety. And the man said, I have the faith of God that He will grant me a miracle. And I will be saved, so thank you. Man kind of shrugged and like, oh, well, okay. So he waited on, and a short time later, the water came up to his waist, and again another neighbor came by in a boat. And again the man said, I have the faith of God that I will find a miracle, that I will be saved by a miracle. So thank you. So another man kind of like, huh? And he paddled on and to his own safety. And then the third time, the water was up to his chest as he's standing on the roof of his house in the middle of this flood. And again, another neighbor comes by in a boat and says, get in, you're going to drown. And he says, thank you, I have the faith of God that a miracle is going to happen, and I'm going to be saved. Thank you. So again, another neighbor kind of shrugged and is like, well, okay, and paddled away. And so the fourth time, just a short time later, the water was up to his chin. And this time a helicopter of rescuers came down and said, climb on the ladder. We want to help you. And he said, "Thank you. I'm expecting a miracle from the divine. Thank you. I'm good." So he wakes up, and he's suddenly at the pearly gates, being introduced to Peter as he's walking in, and he is kind of disgruntled and upset. And Peter's looking at him and says, "What's wrong?" And the man says, "Well, I had faith that I was going to receive a miracle, and no miracle came, so I lost my faith." And St. Peter was like, "Well, what more do you want? We brought you 3 boats and a helicopter." And so, are you ever like that in your own life, looking for a miracle when it's right in front of you and all around you? And if you're ever in that position, I want to talk to you today about some things that you can do, because we are always creating. And I don't know whether you've heard this before. How many of you here have taken classes, in any of the classes in our community? Oh, wow, good, about half of you. Good. So you know that we teach some pretty interesting and cool tools here to help you kind of grow and develop yourself and have a shift in your own awareness. And so when we talk about thoughts become things, you understand exactly what we're talking about. So I want to talk to those of you who might be new to this philosophy called the science of mind or religious science, and explain that, yes, thoughts do become things. Because we're always creating. We are creative beings, whether we think we are or not. Our thoughts are always directing our outer experience. And if you have ever, quantum physicists have actually proven this, that there is a spark of creativity, there is a something. And some have called it God, and we call it spirit or infinite intelligence, creative mind, the universal, the divine. We call it by so many names here in religious science. God is just one of the many. But it's that spark, that energy that creates all the time. It's always manifesting. And it's a pretty proven methodology. And we actually teach it here in our classes, and if you've experienced it doing spiritual mind treatment, which we call affirmative prayer or affirmations or any of the tools that we teach here, you're aware of it. But I'm going to kind of walk you through that today, because the point is that we're always creating, consciously or unconsciously. And so I want to kind of bring us to that realization, what the Buddha says. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. And so if we think we're poor, we'll be poor. If we think we're sickly and unhealthy or unworthy, we'll be sickly and unhealthy. It'll outpicture in our lives and our experiences that way. It's just that's just the way it is. As you think, so you experience. And so we need to consciously take control of our thoughts, because our thoughts are always creative. As I was putting together the outline for this talk this week, Spirit outpictured itself in the most miraculous way for me. And I just had to kind of smile and chuckle as I received an email from Reverend Carol. So, by the way, if you didn't know, Reverend Carol is not here today. She's actually cheering on her son as he's doing one of his shows, I think in Eugene, Oregon right now. So she's in Eugene, loving and supporting him, and so I'm here supporting you. But as she sent this email out, and it was from a member of our community, and I asked her if I could share this email from her. It was the Langes, Ann and Jean, and we know that Jean's been going through a bout of cancer. And so And it was while I was writing this outline, and as I was saying, what is the story I'm going to come up with here? Immediately when I thought that, this email came into my inbox. So I want to read it to you. Hi, Reverend Carol. I wanted to report to you about Gene. He had a full body scan last week, and we were to find out this past Monday what the scoop was on that. It turns out there were no cancer cells on the scan. I think it's just a miracle. That new medication certainly worked, and I'm sure all the prayers worked too. And that is exactly what Expect Ordinaries is. The more you practice the tools and the techniques and the methodologies that we teach in this philosophy, the more you will experience what the outer world calls miracles. And the more you do them, and the more you have these outer experiences of what the rest of the world calls quote-unquote miracles, the more they become ordinaries. When you think it, you expect it, you experience it. It's pretty simple. Ernest Holmes wrote, "A miracle is merely something we are not accustomed to seeing or experiencing. In reality, there are no miracles. For what seems to be a miracle is but the effect of a supremely natural law. The faith that can bring about the least demonstration can bring about the greatest. Great and small exist only in the consciousness of humanity. In the universal mind, there is but one element, completion or perfection." So our founder, when he looked at all the philosophies of the entire world, he looked at Kabbalism in Judaism, he looked at Sufism in Islam, he looked at Buddhism, he looked at Hinduism, he looked at Gnosticism within the spiritual traditions of Christianity. He looked at all of the faiths. And there's an underlying thread of truth in each and every one of those that seem like they're radically different, and in some cases radically opposed. And there is this idea that thoughts become things and we are the controllers of our own experience, and that it is all good. God is always saying yes. And so if God is always saying yes, then why don't we try to capitalize on that and learn from the experience and the wisdom of our forebears who have recognized this? That if our thoughts become things, why don't we take control of our experience and change our thinking? And do it consciously. And so we teach some tools here. How many of you have a spiritual practice, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, or every now and then when you think about it? You know, it's like when we're in classes, and you always say, it's like, so you're doing your spiritual practice this week? You know, well, did you wash dishes this week? Once? Yeah. Did you garden? Once. Did you take a walk out in nature? Once. Did you pet your kitty or your doggy? Once. You did a spiritual practice. So it's anytime you can quiet the mind and just let the mind be still and focus on what is in front of you, the task in front of you, that is spiritual practice. It's clearing your mind of all the clutter and getting real and focused on what is important to you right now, right in this moment, right here. And that's thinking consciously and being consciously present in this moment. That's actually a pretty cool thing to think about. And so when we teach these tools, and the most powerful tool that we teach is affirmative prayer. Ernest Holmes called it spiritual mind treatment. And today I like affirmative prayer. That works for me. And I hadn't heard in a while here what that looks like. And so I'm going to talk to you about the steps of treatment. And there's only 5 of them. They're really simple and they're really direct. And if you want to consciously create in your life from the nothingness of the ethers of energy that are floating in space and time and beyond into a physical manifestation, there's just 5 steps. They're really simple. And the first is really to acknowledge that all there is that. That energy, that overall spark that's in the air, we feel it everywhere, is that presence of the infinite, divine, universal mind, creative intelligence, God, Spirit, whatever name you want to give it, Yahweh. Whatever name you give it, it's still God. That's the first step, and to acknowledge that. And the second step, if any of you, those of you who've taken classes here or anywhere else in a religious science community, are aware of the second step, and it's the most important. And don't even go any further until you get the second step. And that is, what it is, I am. There is no separation between it and me. All that God is, all that the infinite is who and what I am. It's who and what you are. It's who and what each one of us is. It's who and what everything around us is. And until you can connect with that, forget it. You might as well just stop. And when you can feel in your bones and in your soul that, yeah, wow, this infinity of experience, of life that is all around me, yeah, it's coursing through me. You know, and I taught a little 2-week class in kind of the foundations of our community and our philosophy, and reminded everybody that, you know, it's like, maybe a lot of us were taught that, you know, it's like, wow, if you say, I am God, there's like, ooh, I'm going to step over here so that lightning bolt doesn't hit me. That's blasphemous. But yet we still say God is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. Well, what does that mean? God is everywhere. If God is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, and that means it is except right where I am. I'm encased in plastic. It can't touch me. No, it can. It is who and what I am. And so when you connect with that, then steps 3, 4, and 5 are a breeze. And step 3 is, you know what? I'm realizing that I really want to have a conscious change in my experience. So I'm going to state it out loud right now. I'm going to command. And if you've ever heard us talk about the law, there is a law in physics, and we call it the law of cause and effect. The law of conscious creation. It is always creating out of itself into form. Thought into form, always. And so if we're thinking thought into form, then let's do it. Let's have what we want in our lives. And the more you do it, the more experienced you get at it, the more miracles happen in your life, the more ordinary it becomes. You just expect it. And you see it all around you. So I was totally not surprised at all when we received Ann's email this week. Totally not surprised. How ordinary. The infinite is always working, and when we call it forth, it manifests. And so, that third step is calling forth what it is I want as my reality right this second. There isn't any distance between my thought and my experience. That's the third step. And the fourth step is always living in that attitude of gratitude that I talked about last month, which is the focus of today's message, which was our attitude of gratitude. And being so humbled. And I've said this before, is like the one thing that I didn't expect when I went through practitioner training was the experience of humility. That experience of, wow, at a deep, visceral, bone level. I didn't expect to feel and experience the divine, the infinite, at that deep a level, and it was very humbling. And then, of course, the last step is, you know what? I believe it. I spoke it into the law. I know it is so. I'm grateful that it is so. And so what do we say? And so it is. That's why we say, and so it is, instead of amen or hallelujah or whatever it is, we've said in our old traditions. That's why we say, and so it is. I have given it to the infinite. I know it is so. Gratefully I release it, and so it is. And I know that I'm going to experience its manifestation. And I can tell you, so it's like we always say in foundations, how many of you manifested a parking space within your first week of learning this technique in foundations? Exactly. And I live in San Francisco, and like, boy, I really want to manifest a parking space. And so, yeah, we're all taught that. If I can't grasp in my consciousness, that's too big to ask for a cure for cancer or money to get me out of poverty or lack or limitation, or I'm experiencing this thing called sadness and loneliness in my life, and I want some relationship or connections in my life. We'll call it forth. The more you can wrap your consciousness around it, the easier, quickly it manifests, and the more often you do it, you build this thing called faith. I know it's going to happen every time because I just know the infinite. I know this thing called God, Spirit, Source, the divine. Rumi says, and if you don't know Rumi, so is an Islamic Sufi, maybe Sufi, but I read him in studying Sufism, but an Islamic poet and mystic, really. Rumi wrote, "You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life?" We were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl? Why ask for small when I can ask for big? But if I need to build my consciousness that I just can't wrap my head around it, then I'm going to ask for a parking space and watch it. You'll get it. And then watch for the next thing, and watch for the next thing, and watch for the next thing. And as you build it, a faith begins to grow. My favorite mystic, John Bon Jovi. If any of you know, he's a rock and roll musician. I love him and his... And he says, miracles happen every day. Change your perception of what a miracle is, and you'll see them all around you. Change your perception of what a miracle is, and you'll see them all around you. If you are looking to experience this thing called greater, grander, more glorious, more powerful, more majestic, positive, good, right, wholesome, whatever those things are, those qualities and experiences are, more love, more life, more health, more joy, more abundance, more living. Practice this stuff. It's really simple. It's really easy. Shawn Haven was so gracious this morning in developing our altar. Simple and direct. Thoughts become things. So there's the flame in there that is, that's the universal spark is always alive. The flame is always there. Catch it. And express, outpicture as these beautiful plants. Just really simple. Outpicture as life. It's really simple. We might make it sound complicated sometimes, or you might get scared thinking it's complicated sometimes, but it's really simple. Thoughts become things. So begin thinking consciously, and begin always thinking consciously, and expect miracles. My mother is having her second bout of this thing called cancer. 15 years ago, she decided to put us through this thing called cancer in her own life, and she didn't manifest it. I'm not going to say that, but it's like she went through this experience, and I prayed, and I knew the truth. And in 15 years, she's been cancer-free. In fact, she's not ever had the recurrence of that particular cancer in her life at all. And just several years ago, as I was starting my business, and I was in Prac 1 here, actually. I was at another community, but I was taking Prac 1 here. My mother had a stroke and a heart attack brought on by some dental work that got infected and got in her blood. And I knew the truth. She's perfect, whole, and complete. No matter what the outcome is, I knew she's perfect, whole, and complete. And the night before the surgery, I prayed with her, and I prayed differently than her Methodist friends and neighbors. But I recognized the truth for her right away. And the next day, as we were waiting, and the first time I spoke to you guys, some of you came up to me and asked, "Does your mother live?" Because I forgot to tell you all the punchline at the end of that when she did. We were waiting in the little room. The doctor was going to give us the pronouncement of how the surgery went. My aunt was like, I had lost the circulation in my arm. She was holding on to me so tightly. But I was like, let go. I know the truth. Don't worry. It's all good. And they had described this really long, complicated, convoluted procedure. I was going to have to replace her heart valves, and then she'd have to do it again in a while because it wouldn't last very long. And they came out and said, "You know what? We got in there, and it was pretty simple and pretty easy. We just repaired the valve that was there, and she's good to go." And I was like, of course. How ordinary. How ordinary. I expected it. And so I expect that outcome now. Now, they gave her a really short prognosis, 3 to 4 years now, and so I've kind of been working with her and reminding her, you have faith, you believe in an afterlife, you believe in this thing called heaven and whatever, and so you believe in it, right? Well, yes. Okay, then what are you worried about? And I know you're perfect, whole, and complete just the way you are. And so she just proclaimed to me yesterday, Scott, I've decided, I'm gonna live longer. I'm gonna live at least 10 years. Like, well, congratulations, you decided to live big rather than small. You're flying, you have wings. Why crawl around? And why accept what someone else says for you? I'm in control of me. So when you use the spiritual tools, keep doing them. Rinse and repeat. Repeatedly, keep doing it. If you're getting it, keep doing it. Charles Fillmore writes, God never performs miracles. If by miracle is meant a departure from universal law, whatever the prophets did was done by the operation of laws, inherent in being, and open to the discovery of every man. If you really cannot picture quote-unquote miracles, manifest a parking space. Start there. Then start there tomorrow. Then the next day, and the next day. And as you have the front parking space in the building every time in a crowded city, you'll build your faith in this thing called miracles. And then try it out on something that seems bigger than that. And so, I want to leave you with one final thought. And that is to consciously create big things and witness the miracles of the infinite everywhere. Namaste. And so I want to invite us to do that inner work for just a moment, recognizing the glory and the power and the presence of the infinite. That majesty of the divine that is always manifesting all around us, whether consciously or unconsciously, whether we believe it or not. It's always saying yes. And as I know that it's who and what I am and who and what each one here is and everyone and everything all around us, I know that it is. And so I call it forth now in my life and in the lives of everyone here and everyone that we love and hold dear. Greater and grander and more glorious things. The infinite showing forth brightly in our lives. Manifesting itself in quote-unquote miracles. And in faith, I know it is so. And so I call forth more love, more joy, more health, more prosperity, more loving relationships, more wholeness and healing and harmony, creative self-expression in our lives, right here, right now. The infinite in expression as me, as each one. So I give thanks for this. I give thanks for the awareness, and I give thanks for the manifestation of these ordinaries. So as I give it to God, blessing it as so, and knowing it is already done, nothing more to be done, I just let it go and let it be. And so it is.